Hey everyone, welcome. Day 8, Bauman Wellness Week. Wellness works for all 9 days a week. It's been an amazing ride. Such a good experience being with you and being with the friends who will see this after the event. Today is a treasure for me. It's a reunion with my dear friend and colleague, Chef Lizette Marx. We're going to be talking about healing food and spices. So wet your lips, get a cup of tea, and welcome. So here we are, cooking with the flavors of health. That's the name of the cookbook Lizette and I did. And there am I, Dr. Ed, Chef Ed. So I'm in the red coat, I'm Chef Ed. When I'm in the sport coat, I'm Dr. Ed. And community wellness is the next frontier. And we're really dedicated to moving from otherness and illness to wellness and oneness. So that's really kind of our purpose. And we have others with us right here who's 100% supporting that. Started the Bauman College in '89 because there wasn't anything representing the whole food nutrition that we've come to know and love. And then in 2019, really turned full focus to community wellness. That the Nutrition College, Bauman College continues. It's now accredited. It's great. And I've been a lifelong advocate for wellness, nutrition, culinary arts, and really community building. So I love being a mentor in community building. Oh, isn't that a pretty picture of Chef Lizette? And this is Bauman Wellness about 15 years ago. So look at, that's Geoffrey in the middle. That's Lizette's husband. And there's all of us practicing spiritual nutrition at Vitality Fasting Retreat. So we did fasting retreats together for 25 years. And it was beautiful. Teas and juices and broths and water and yoga and meditation and exercise and health talks and just beautiful community sharing, community building. So I have a hunch some of that's coming back around the corner. Talking today, healing food and spices. How does food heal? We all talk about that, but what's really going on there? And what are the 5 levels of eating? I had the 4 levels of eating back in the day, but there's another level to share with you today. And then talking about savory spice blends and an incredible cooking demo with tips and techniques from Chef Lizette. And of course, this presentation, as all our work, is educational. We're not trying to compete or replace with medicine. We don't diagnose, we don't treat, we don't advise. We inspire, we educate, we collaborate. So what are healing foods, huh? What do you think about that? It's foods that make us feel good. I think that's important, and it's seasonal and fresh. So right now it's summer solstice. So we're going to talk about foods for this season. And it's food that help us to get or stay well. So that's kind of important. We're up against quite a bit of threat, environmentally, socially, and otherwise. And foods that are raised with care, foods that are grown in good soil, foods that we source and that we love, and that we know where they come from and they nourish us. Foods prepared with love and foods with healing properties. So these are all healing food, properties of healing foods. So here, cooking for health, this is a phrase that we use. Health challenges create a need to eat healthy food. People who are fat and comfortable don't want to change. People who are suffering have to change. So these health challenges, be it a virus, be it a chronic condition, be it pain, bring people to us and they go, medicine has not helped me heal my problem. I want to learn what I can do for myself. So people don't change, but they don't want to be sick. Plants, animals, and humans, all living form depends on nutrients to support health, protect against pest and pestilence. So we're in a biblical time right now. We're really in an apocalyptic time. And this will bode well for those of us on a wellness trajectory. And this is why we want to bring other people on board so that we will do well, we will adapt, we will really achieve a higher level of being. And it's the impurities in the food, the air, the water, and the media. The media. We've been eating some bad information. It's really been making us rather ill. And most of us know that it's tainted, but we don't really know what to do about that. So we're teaching authentic natural health practices, centuries old. I like this phrase. I don't know if you've seen this one, but when the diet is wrong, medicine's of no use. Think about that. People are not eating well. They're going to the doctor. They're getting some help, but it's not sufficient. And when the diet is right, medicine is of no need. So what many of us are doing is helping people learn to be well, learn to eat well, do wellness practices, and they can reduce their medication and also their self-medication with substances that are not health promoting. I like this one. I've used this before. Eating is a choice. I think that's super important. Make a good choice. Every time you think about eating or you think about behavior, think about, well, what do I want? Do I want some broccoli? Would that be a healthy choice? Or ice cream or a piece of fish or whatever that is? I think it's fried chicken. And there's reasons why we make choices, obviously. It's not typically a rational decision. It's typically an emotional decision. So making a healthy choice and just making a better choice. This is what I want to share this morning is the 5 levels of eating personally, internally, moving from convenience to conscious eating, not being told what to do, but experimenting thoughtfully, wisely. So the first level is eating for pleasure. Well, we all love pleasure. We love food. Everyone does in this room and everywhere, really. But eating for pleasure is sort of the most instinctual, least sophisticated or conscious level. And very often it's to alleviate pain. And in this case, people tend to go for sweets and treats. As Lizette said, she liked that sweet and natural. I don't blame her. And they create a shift in our energy level and our mood. But typically it's very poor quality and it's very refined and it doesn't contain nutrient density and complexity. And it's fine once in a while. It's not a problem. I eat for pleasure and I eat healthy food for pleasure, not conscious, not unconscious foods. And level 2 is eating for energy. And we all do this too. We're busy people, we're running around. And very often we eat food that is prepared by others. It could be burritos, could be sandwiches, could be pizza, could be Buddha bowls, but it's basically quick, fast, typically made by others, certain amount of nutrient value, not necessarily high level, but certainly more than sweets and treats, etc. Level 3 is eating for recovery. And this is what happens after 20 or 30 years. And nowadays with children, more and more children are not well. So they have to go on a special diet. And these special diets could be something called a ketogenic diet, could be an elimination diet, could be vegan diet, could be all kinds of restrictive diets. And again, vegan diet is terrific. It can be any of these levels. It just depends on the quality of the food. But eating for recovery is usually short term. It's usually for a few months. It's not a few weeks, but to look at eliminating food sensitivities, so looking at eliminating contaminants in food, at simplifying the diet, it's really reducing the number of foods we eat and focusing on foods that work for us or work for the condition that people are dealing with. Level 4 is eating for health, and this is a more mature approach to eating. This is conscious eating. This is reflective. This is mindful. This is more self-care. We're buying the food, we're sourcing the food, we're making the food. We recognize that certain amounts of food are very well tolerated. Greater amounts of even a good food are not well tolerated. We're really eating to support a healthy microbiome. We're eating to be ecologically sound. We're thinking about the choices we're making. And then level 5 is spiritual nourishment. And this is really some form of prayer, meditation, blessing, acknowledgement, connection with source, with earth. Eating less. Eating less is a key to living longer. It may be fasting, it may be intermittent fasting, but it's really revering the source of our nourishment and letting our bodies heal. Our bodies are a self-cleaning oven that do a tremendous amount of healing work when we eat less and the quality of our food is good. Doing a modified fast once a week, twice a week, 1 weekend a month, 1 week a year are things that we can do together. And then instead of eating every time we get stressed or we think we're hungry, we're having a cup of tea. We're blessing our water, changing the structure of the water. We had a beautiful talk on water about the intention and the thought shifts the structures within the water, within the juice, within the tea. We know that there are impurities in the world, but we have such strength and power to biotransform them within ourselves. We can only do that when we come at it from a level of grace and gratitude. Healing whole foods. Okay. So a lot of people don't even know what a whole food is. It's certainly not a store, so we can be sure of that. But it's a single primary food. So it's a fish, it's a broccoli, it's lentils. It's not a prepackaged food, it's not a food product. There's different degrees of separation, the foods that we eat. The first degree is getting the food right from the yard. The second degree is getting the food from the farmer. Oh, that's nice. We go to the farmer's market, we meet the farmer, we smell the food, test the food, buy the food. The third degree could be a co-op where we order together and we share the good food, or we go to that farmer's market and buy a case of food and divvy it up amongst our friends and family. The fourth is we go to a food store and the food's in a package. Well, if it's in a package, the food is actually starting to suffocate. Food wants to breathe, and most foods in stores have been sprayed. Chlorine is commonly sprayed on produce. Chlorine is in our water. There's a tremendous emphasis on sanitation with food. And then the next degree of separation is it's in a package to microwave and heat and eat. And many people, this is convenience eating. They go, oh, great, I have a TV dinner. I'm all set, no problem. Oh, I hear microwaving keeps the nutrients in the food. That's a media myth. And then the last, or whatever goes beyond that, is just really food that is mystery meat. It's food that we don't know where it came from. It's probably from abroad. We don't know who's handled it. We really don't know anything about this food, and it doesn't carry a very wholesome or high vibration. So we're looking for food that is local, seasonal, organic, and affordable, free of pesticides, herbicides, hormones, and antibiotics. You go, well, gee, hormones in foods? Yeah. Hormones are added to many types of animal food, even seafood. And if you look at it, synthetic fertilizer, NPK, could almost be called a growth hormone for plants because it's like a steroid to make that plant super big and also heavier, more market value, less nutritional value. So we're looking at healing foods that have no synthetic or artificial ingredient and no genetically modified organisms. The list of genetically modified organisms are growing. Bayer bought Monsanto. Bayer has bought many of the large farms. Colleague Zach Bush said Bayer now owns 90% of commercial agriculture in the world. By owning this land, by owning the seeds, by owning the fertilizers, by giving farmer subsidies, which our government certainly supports, this is the food that people are eating that's making them sick. Soil is the source of nutrients. So the more diverse the plant life, the better the air, water, and the less electromagnetic disturbance. So I'm going to stop my share for a minute and show you something. this is what I picked. If you could spotlight me, Chris. Okay. So this is backyard food. This is Bauman backyard food. All right. I don't see me, but you probably will. So what I want you to see, first of all, is can you see what that is? Anybody? What's it look like? Blueberries. Isn't that great? So I'm sorry to pick the plant. I asked permission, but these are fresh blueberries right off the bush. There's nothing like it. The wild blueberry would be like it, but again, a blueberry fresh off the book or off the plant is phenomenal. This, can you see it? Pears. Pears on the tree. We have a small yard, but we have 13 fruit trees or fruit bushes because a berry is a bush. This one is really one of my favorites. You see that? Pomegranate. So that's what a pomegranate looks like. Isn't it beautiful? Wow, look at the color. And then look at this little fruit that will grow into a nice plump pomegranate in the fall. And we have a lot of these growing in our backyard. So when you go, it's awfully expensive to buy these in the store. Once you get it going in your yard, it's not. This is fresh fig with the fig leaf. So this could be a bathing suit for some out in the wilds. You never can tell. But this is a green fig. It will turn purple. It will turn juicy and ripe. And people come to the Bauman home for Fig Fest. So Lizette and Jeff, you're more than welcome to come with us and forage and have a feast. And this is my new friend. Can you see that?
Fennel. Yes.
This is a 9-foot fennel plant. 9 feet. This plant is like as tall as my fingertips. And it's just phenomenal. And the bulb is at the bottom and all this leaf is good and it's kind of hot. Resilience is really the power word. Resilience is strength, it's flexibility, it's adaptability, it's really getting stronger as things get more difficult. And it's a beautiful model. It looks at the outer ring being beverages. And our bodies are largely water. The purity of the water, the purity of the beverage really defines the cleansing and hydration value of the body. So we can do fresh water, something that's purified, fresh juice, something that's organic. And by drinking a fresh juice, we're getting 90%, 95% of the bioflavonoids and carotenes in the juice. If we ate the whole fruit, which is also wonderful, of course, we don't absorb quite as much. So for certain people at certain times, an organic juice is very good. And it tends to be rather glycemic, so I encourage people to dilute it about 33%. And mineral broth, which is cooking vegetables, cooking roots, cooking crunchy vegetables, cooking leafy vegetables, adding seaweeds, adding mushrooms, shiitake mushroom, adding spices, adding flax seeds, and that's the Bauman mineral broth. We'll share recipes with you on that. And for people who want bone broth, they can add the bones, the chicken bones, lamb bones into the broth as well. Slow cook for several hours, and herb teas. For me, herb tea is the starting point for people to pivot into a path to wellness, because tea and reflection enables us to take stock of what's going on and how we can start to cleanse and heal. Going through the mandala, the next ring is carbohydrates. And certainly carbohydrates have been maligned. I'm on a low carb diet. I don't eat carbs, blah, blah. Oh, that's ridiculous. Carbohydrates are fruits and vegetables, grains and beans, etc. They're very nourishing. The whole food is what makes them powerful. The fibers are what make them powerful. The colors are what make them powerful. The natural hydration in these foods is very necessary for us. And I lean towards a gluten-free model. I'm not rigid. I don't say we can't eat gluten, but we have to look at non-hybridized wheat that it has a lower protein content. Natural wheat is 12% protein. modern commercial wheat has now been hybridized up to 28% protein. And people who have gluten sensitivities tend to have a compromised digestion. As people use healing spices, their tolerance for food, for these foods they have sensitivities with, tends to be better. Diversity tends to breed tolerance. Then the middle ring is booster foods, and that's a coin I termed. And that's where herbs and spices live. That's where condiments live. That's where all the international gourmet flavors live, in that ring of booster foods, along with sea vegetables and algae, which are the most mineral-rich sources of food that actually add a nice flavor, a nice salt, a nice umami to our dishes, a nutritional yeast, which is a yellow flaky powder that's remarkable for blood sugar control and immune support. So it's even helpful for people who have yeast overgrowth conditions because it keys the immune system to clear some of the yeast overgrowth in a dysbiotic gut. And then protein of many different sources and varieties, and nuts and seeds. Seeds are the source of life. So ancient seeds have everything. They have amino acids, they have fatty acids, they have fiber, they have vitamins, they have minerals, they have phytonutrients, they can be fermented, and they often carry microorganisms. So what you see in terms of really what the new model of nutrition is, for all of those properties, macro, micro, phyto, there's 3 micronutrients. We know what those are: protein, fat, and carbs. There's now 120 micronutrients. Well, that's not in our conventional food. It's not in our multivitamin. So by eating poor quality food from an environment that's really been contaminated, people are suffering. Phytonutrients, there's 1,000 phytonutrients, many of which are bioflavonoids, 500 varieties. So that the specificity and the color spectrum really indicates the variety of flavonoids and carotenes. So these orange-yellow foods are wonderful carotenes as well as green foods. And then certainly quality fluids and natural ferments, which are things that have bacteria and things that have lactic acid, support the gut and healthy microorganisms, which are actually on the food and in our gut. So that's a snapshot of eating for health and resilience. I love this picture of these whole spices. So we've talked about whole foods. Now we're talking about whole spices. And most of us have jars. We have little powdered cinnamon, powdered nutmeg, powdered garlic, powdered. Well, it oxidizes when it's powdered. So the key to getting top level spices are spices that have not been cracked or crushed or heated or exposed to air. And throughout the ages, herbs and spices have been revered. It's mentioned in holy books from every part of the world. It's mentioned in primitive cultures, they revere their native plants. Edible plants are used worldwide to heal body, mind, and soul. That's kind of interesting. In India, they revere the tulsi plant. It's a holy basil. They don't cook with it. They just have it there. They put it in their puja, in their shrine. They reflect on the qualities, the way it reflects the light, the way it freshens the air, the way the leaves extend. It's beautiful. Being with plants has a quality of art, quality of beauty, a quality of energy and vibration that we can resonate with and lose the blues and build a certain kind of lightness to our own being. We don't find that in powdered spice mixes. The demand for spices in the West exploded in the 17th and 18th century, following export via the Silk Road trade from the East to the West. Chris and I were in India and Thailand in the pandemic, in early pandemic. We almost got stranded in Thailand. We'd be talking to you from Thailand for the year, but we did come back, too bad. And we saw a lot of these plants. We saw how nutmeg grows on a tree. It's fabulous to see. spices in their native form and to smell and taste and crush these spices. Spices are intrinsic to local and global culture for culinary, ceremonial, and medical use. Certainly sage and cedar are used as purification when they're smoked, used for smoke. Or the Native Americans will use corn and tobacco as a sacrament. So we're looking to bring back intrinsic, indigenous traditions that are meaningful to us. I'm going to mention a few products, and then I want to show them to you, is turmeric. And I think turmeric has remarkable properties, and people go, well, I have aches and pains, I have inflammation, do I do the root or the food? And do I do the root, the powder, or the extract? And the answer is all three. So the root has 500 bioflavonoids. I mean, it's just so complex. It's so rich. It's got tremendous savory, pungent, bitter, sweet, salty properties. So it's a beautiful food. And it's good in tea. I don't know that people have thought, just like they could use ginger in tea, you could put turmeric in tea. And using the root, it's very nice to grate or to slice it. Golden milk. Golden milk. I'm sure we love our golden milk. I'm going to come back to that one, okay? Because Chef Lizette's going to show us a beautiful variation on golden milk. Spoiler, we're going to have golden spice frozen custard. Ooh, I can't wait. It's hot over here. And then I'm back with basil, aromatic basil, holy basil. And that's pictures of Dr. B in India with fresh basil. And basil is a beautiful aromatic plant. It's a respiratory tonic. It's an antimicrobial. It's a blood cleanser and a blood builder. The only problem with growing basil is the crows like it, the bugs like it, the rodents like it, everybody likes basil. We grew fresh basil in front of our Bauman Wellness Center in Berkeley, and it all got nipped by the crows. So sometimes we will have to put a little screen over it. But a beautiful plant, a beautiful salad plant, and also goes well with fruit. So what we look at is pairings, contrast of flavors, savory, sweet, aromatic. And ashwagandha, isn't that interesting? It's a root. It's called an adaptogen. It's similar in some ways to ginseng or to other kinds of, or licorice, some other types of adaptogenic root. And the whole plant is beneficial. So the root has tremendous amount of calming and strengthening properties. So with people with sleep disorder, I'll say use ashwagandha during the day so that you can rest at night. It's good for an exhausted nervous system. It's good for supporting thyroid adrenal interaction. So again, most of us have a bit of wear and tear on our endocrine system. And it can be used as a food. So that's all very interesting. A+ chocolate bar. So this is a recipe from Spice for Life where we're looking at a teaspoon of ashwagandha root powder, and we'll put it in some boiling water. And then we'll add maca, which is a Peruvian turnip. Again, a very nice steroid hormone tonic, good for the reproductive system, good for the adrenal system, good for blood sugar stability, and moderate amount. And cacao powder, which is a remarkable food. So if you go, is chocolate okay? Cacao is good, and then the chocolate depends on how much cacao is in there relative to sugar. But anything over 65%, I would consider to be really positive. And it is a bit caffeinated, so best during the early part of the day. And coconut butter, cocoa butter, hemp butter, if you can find it. It's there, it's hemp seeds, it's ground hemp seeds, honey and sea salt. And you can use other oils or fats. You can use nut butters in this recipe. And it's amazing. It's very tasty. It's got a good, strong kick to it. So it will help us when we're working hard, going through 9 days of Bauman Wellness Week, or give the kids a snack, make an energy ball out of this with the ashwagandha root. And fresh ginger. So again, there's many varieties of ginger. It's a beautiful plant. It's a tropical plant. And ginger is the premier digestive tonic for people who are a little sluggish, don't metabolize foods very well. Ginger tea, ginger in spiced cooking, even ginger as a topical rub on areas where there's congestion, there's swollen lymph glands. A ginger poultice is really quite nice. And cinnamon, look at that. It's the bark of the tree. It's the inner bark of a tropical tree. Did you ever think of that? It's not just a powder that we get at the store. And these trees are sacrificing. These trees grow rather quickly. They grow in the tropics. And good quality cinnamon comes from Ceylon. But there's sort of poor quality cinnamon that grows from other parts of the world that's really not as good. So again, with all of these spices, the smell, the taste, the quality gives us an indication. And cinnamon is something to use abundantly with fruits. Cinnamon improves insulin sensitivity. So people who are dealing with weight gain, with metabolic syndrome, with diabetes, pre-diabetes, cinnamon is great. And it can be taken up to a teaspoon at a time. So I think with herbs and spices, that the art is the dosing. Some things a pinch or two, like if I were using turmeric, I might use a half a teaspoon or perhaps a teaspoon in a large dose. But with cinnamon, can use really quite a bit. My favorite is saffron. And saffron is pure gold. Saffron are the strands of the safflower plant. Very interesting. It's the fiber. It's the stamen of these plants. And it has remarkable lifting properties for the spirit, for the mind, for the mood. It's predominant in Iranian Persian foods. It's revered in culinary of India and of the Middle East. So having good quality saffron is really very nice. I like it in golden milk. I like it as a finishing element. I'll put some saffron in fruit salad. I'll even eat a few strands of saffron as a refresher. Just a couple of strands in the mouth create quite an effect on the olfactory nerves. All right, so this is turmeric. This is a form of black turmeric. Isn't that amazing? We see turmeric as orange, but this variety of black turmeric is the most potent. And it's grown by Farmer Rob, our colleague, our Bauman Wellness colleague in Savannah, Georgia. Smells great, looks great, really special. Excellent in food, excellent in tincture form for healing. All right, and I can help us get some of this if this sounds kind of enticing to you.
Yes.
This is red ginger. So look at the color of that. You'd say that looks like turmeric, not ginger. But that is a variety of red ginger. Wow. And if you put this on your face, you'll get some mascara. You get some rouge. This is ashwagandha. So this is the root of ashwagandha, a small root, a rootlet. And typically, if you're using it in that A+ bar, you'll get it in a powder form. This is a nice cinnamon bark, okay, the cinnamon bark. And Lizette will show us how we can use these. And finally, the treasure, saffron, okay? So saffron is worth its weight in culinary gold. Saffron is beautiful. Oh, gosh, it smells so good. And so here's the A+, ashwagandha cocoa bar, all right? And I'm gonna cut it up in pieces. And when I see you guys, we're all gonna sample our ashwagandha A+. and we're going to be rocking so heavy. But it's great. It's just like one of your energy bars. It's not cooked. I even dropped a couple of chocolate chips in there. Wow. I'm good.
Everyone, yes, like Jeff said, my name's Lizette, Chef Lizette in the kitchen, and I have been cooking for more than 30 years. I found this book written by one of your graduates, and I think it was called Sweet and Natural or something like that. But anyway, I thought this is an amazing book. Everything was, at the time, all whole grain flours and really good quality sugars and stuff. It was all desserts because that was sort of my gateway into cooking. And I looked in the back and I found IET. Oh my gosh, there's actually a culinary school out there that doesn't just cook with white flour, white sugar, because I was looking for a good culinary school. I found your school and enrolled. Took me a couple of years, but I finally enrolled with my husband, Jeff, and we did the nutrition consulting program. And at the time I was already working. I was working for a catering company and a baking company. And the professional baking company I was working with, we make cakes for kids. But while I was doing the nutrition program, my whole focus was to make those all healthy. I didn't realize that I was a little ahead of the kind of gluten-free wave, but parents were asking for this. So I was making cakes gluten-free, vegan, paleo, without even really being aware of the kind of catchphrases for those things. I was just doing it. And I was doing it for my clients, making cakes that looked like maybe, they were specialty cakes. I then became a lead chef instructor. And since my whole time at Bauman College teaching through the culinary program, I also started programs, holistic health and plant-based programs, all variety of things at various hospitals and through health practices and things like that. One of them that I did for 6 years was I developed a program for Kaiser's wellness, their physician wellness program. So also I've done some professional recipe development with a lot of different companies and reputable authors. And Jeff and I, my husband, going back, we work together at Marx Culinary. We have our own business. And we had the shift online in 2020, so we're kind of moving a little more that way, offering cooking classes and just all different types of things in this format now. And it's been a really fun ride. I'm back with Bauman College again they also had to pivot for their culinary program, and all of that is going online. So I've been one of the key writers for that curriculum to develop it in that way. So it's like never a dull moment.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful, Lizette.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I look forward to today because we love to cook together and teach together and be together, and Geoffrey is certainly a part of us.
Dr. Ed, it's always good to hear everything you have to say about eating for health, all of you just love of spices and everything like that. We share that because I love cooking with different spices. I love trying to figure out how to bring those flavors into my cooking. And so today I'm going to show you how I layer my flavors for these two different recipes, but actually you get a bonus because I'm actually making 3 things. So the first one I'm going to be making is that golden spice frozen custard. Basically, frozen custard is ice cream, by the way. And the reason why it's a custard is because it is actually, I'm going to be making a custard. So more of a kind of a pourable custard. And that is the base for this wonderful confection. And I did, of course, make it yesterday when it was over 100 degrees. And then we churned it this morning and it was just like, okay, because I wanted to show you the final product, but it does take some chilling time. So when you're making this, you can use any variety of milk, but I recommend definitely one of them being coconut milk, and use a good quality full fat coconut milk. Just find one. I like to find one. This brand here is really good. It's Native Forest. And the reason why I like this one is because it doesn't have any other like binders, like the guar gum or anything like that. Many coconut milks you'll see have that binder. And it's not, I mean, for some people, if they're sensitive, they can react to it. I know I don't do so well with that. So I always look for coconut milk that is just coconut milk. and that isn't light coconut milk. So you want to get a full fat. This is a good quality fat here. So we're going to add this to a saucepan. So first we add our milks. We add the coconut milk, and then we're going to add some, either you can use a heavy cream, so a good quality organic heavy cream. You could also use almond milk or any kind of non-dairy milk. I would just, get something that's rich, so nothing too light. Like rice milk's okay, but it might make your final product a little icy. So it's just, those are the things. The more fat you have in a frozen dessert, the better. So we're gonna add a heavy cream in here. You could also, if you want, just do this 100% coconut milk, that's fine. But I like the blend, just, it gives a little bit of, and this is sort of part of like, I'm kind of starting with the building block here. So I want my base to have a little bit of depth to it, and I find these two milks work really well. All right, so what we're going to do is a technique called infusion. And so we want to infuse some of our whole spices into the milk, and we're going to heat it up. So I'm going to add in the cinnamon. So we got some good Ceylon cinnamon, and then some sliced, I sliced these ahead, but this is ginger that I sliced. And so we're going to add about 3 coins of ginger. And then in the recipe, I kind of tell you to do some powdered spices, but you could also add some of those whole spices as powder, some of the whole spices and the powdered spices as well. So I added in some cardamom pods. We're going to do about 4 of those. I'm just going to put those in and just put the whole pod in. We're going to fish these out later. And if we had a kind of a close-up camera, you could see the pod. But I get, when you're looking for any kind of whole spice, you should be able to smell it. It should be very aromatic. If it's not, then it might be a little old. So that's something to watch out for. And something I also want to tell you about this is when you infuse your spices like this, you can do that more than once. It's sort of like when you're making a dashi in Japanese cuisine, you can make a second stock out of the kombu and the bonito and everything. You can make a second round. So we're gonna just after I do this, I can rinse them off and use it again for maybe making just a straight up golden milk, or maybe to spice up a hot chocolate. Although this is not hot chocolate weather, so But if it suddenly the temperature goes down, not happening today. So this one that I'm holding here looks like a star, and Dr. Ed, you didn't mention this one, but this is a star anise, and I love this one. It smells like licorice, but it has another element in here, almost like allspice. And I just find it to be kind of one of those mysterious spices. It's probably one of the most beautiful to photograph. And I think Chris would agree. It's a beautiful spice. So just put 2 of them in there and just put those in. And then some whole peppercorns. So I got about 4 whole peppercorns, which doesn't seem like that's a lot, but actually, peppercorns are pretty potent, and when you have a dessert or you don't want too much. The reason I put the peppercorns in there is because because it's golden milk, when you add pepper, it kind of activates all the wonderful properties that turmeric has to offer. I have some fresh turmeric too, so if you have the ability to get some fresh turmeric, add it in just like you would your ginger coins. So I'm just going to slice a few. And then just put that right into this infusion that I'm going to start. And then I'm just going to start my heat right now just to get things going. And when you're infusing, you want to infuse about 15 minutes or so. And while that's happening, we're going to be doing a few other things. So just going to get that going. And then we're going to add a little bit of vanilla bean. So again, you want to go whole, you can go ground, you could go extracts and things like that, but there's really no comparison to a whole vanilla bean. It is one of the most beautiful smells. It's just so wonderful. And so, a vanilla bean comes from the orchid. So you think about that. What we're going to do is we're going to split it in half. That's what I'm doing. And then you take the tip of your knife to get out the seeds. So I want the seeds in there. And I want the whole pod. So I'm just going to take the seeds out to get those telltale little flecks. Okay, and then we're just going to put the whole pod right in. I already did this one, so we're just going to add him in. And then we're going to move on to our powdered spices. So what I have here is some cinnamon and fennel powder. Now, if you could also use fennel seeds. So just so you know, you can go whole or ground. And I use both because I want this to have actually stain it. And so the actually ground spices will help stain the milk and give it that golden color. So we're going to add that and also add flavor, of course. And then we're going to add some turmeric. Notice I haven't added a sweetener yet. Well, I'm going to get there. So we're going to add the turmeric powder, right in about a teaspoon of that. And so that's all of our spices. And then we just take a whisk and whisk it through. And because you said this, and I decided to grab some saffron. It's not on my recipe, but I mean, why not? So I've got a ton of saffron here. I'm just going to get a good pinch. Now, saffron is expensive, so you only need a pinch. A pinch does the trick. So we'll add a pinch of that saffron in our infusion. So I'm just going to whisk this through, and then we add a half a cup of maple syrup, which is not bad as far as sweets are concerned. That's not a lot of sugar for a batch of frozen custard. So we just whisk this through. Want to bring it to heat. I'm going to add a pinch of sea salt. And what sea salt does is it it's like, to me, it's a community builder in terms of flavor. It brings all those flavors to the table so that you can really taste them, smell them. And salt just brings things out. So we want that salt in there. A little salt in the sweet is a good thing. All right, so we're just gonna let this heat through. Give it a good whisk. Now, as you're heating it, you might, see a little bit like just the powder and everything. That's totally fine. It all comes together once we're done. And as you're whisking, you might get those whole spices latching on to your thyme, but that's fine. So I'm gonna let that sit there. And while we're letting that come to heat, we have to prepare what's called the binding or the kind of thickening agent. So the thickening agent in this case is egg yolks. So get good quality pastured eggs. Now, of course, you could make this egg-free. And so if you wanted to do that, you'd skip the egg part. That's fine. But I must tell you, if you don't have an issue with eggs, if you love eggs, and eggs are so nutritious for you, and the fats in the yolks are just lovely, then add the eggs in. It just increases the nutrient density of this dish. So we're going to add 3 egg yolks. And then I'm going to also add arrowroot powder. So if it's egg-free, I'm only using 1 tablespoon of arrowroot powder because I have eggs. If you don't use eggs, use about 3 tablespoons of arrowroot powder. That'll help thicken this and make it more like a custard. All right, so let me just watch my heat. Okay, I see a little bubbling around the edges. One thing I noted in the recipe is to not let your milk come to a full boil, because if it does, it's very easy for it to overboil, and you just don't need to heat it up that much. So I just turned down my heat. So now I'm taking a sieve right now, and the reason is because whenever you're working with a powdered starchy ingredient, sometimes it has lumps, and so I want to get those lumps out when I add it into my egg yolks. So I just add it into a little sieve and just give it a little shake so it's nice and smooth. And then we're just going to whisk this through. Okay, so now it's nice and smooth. I have a small whisk. It's nice to get many varieties of whisks, everyone. You can never have enough whisks and enough spatulas, I must tell you. So we whisk this together till it's nice and smooth. Now, invariably what happens is you'll see little lumps that form. Just keep whisking. And if you find that you have a hard time getting them, don't worry, we have a whole nother step at the end of this whole process that's going to get any little beads or bits out of your custard. So just give it a good whisk until it's mostly smooth. All right. Okay, so that looks nice and smooth. Okay, so now I'm going to do a technique that's called tempering. So tempering, we'll just set that down there. Give this a little stir. This is looking good. So what tempering is you want to add a little bit of something hot to something that's cool. Eggs will cook if you pour it right in. Then you'll get some weird egg yolk scramble in your custard. That's not what you want to happen. So we temper. So I give that a whisk, and I know it's hot. So I'm going to just bring and I'm a righty, okay? So you take a ladle. I'm just going to take a ladle here. And then I'm going to just while whisking, drip it in. So little drips of my hot spiced milk here into the yolks. And just whisk continuously. And when you whisk, no big turns, just a little turn. Kind of like, I think of it like you're whisking around the size of a quarter. So it's little circles, little spirals here as I go. And I'm going to do 2 ladles worth. So this is the first ladle. And then I can feel the bowl. It's just slightly warm. It's totally fine. And it's totally smooth. In fact, by doing that, I actually made this smoother than when I had the arrowroot in there. So now we'll just add the next little bit. And then as I go, I can go faster because now the temperature is equalized. Okay? And now there's less likelihood of me cooking eggs and getting scrambled eggs in my custard.
That's good.
Okay. And by the way, if anyone has questions, I'm always happy to ask questions. If you want me to slow down, let me know. Okay. So now I'm just going to turn the heat down. There's one other step I want to do. These spices have been infusing for a while. And when you're cooking, you always want to kind of pay attention to how things are kind of coming together. And what I want to do here is I want to get some of my larger spices out. So I'm going to take a slotted spoon, or I could take this spider here to take them out. And just place them and set them aside. Because when I whisk this through and make a custard, everything's going to get in the way. Peppercorns and little tiny things like that, don't worry about it. You'll get them later. But the big guys, I just, honestly, it's just, they kind of get in the way when you do the whisking. Because this is the part where we make the custard and the whisking is key. So we've got the heat on, just a really tiny little simmer here, no boil. Now we pour those tempered eggs right into a thin stream. And this takes very little time. Okay, I can really smell this custard. It smells so delicious. Set that aside. And then we whisk until this thickens and coats the back of the spoon. So what I mean when I say coat the back of the spoon is when I put the spoon in, the custard's going to look thick on the back of the spoon. Not super thick. It's just going to coat it evenly. And then to check that the custard is ready, I'll take my finger and trace a line right in the middle. And I'll show you how I do that. So while you're doing this, just continue whisking. Don't leave. Don't answer the phone.
Got that. Take note, my dear.
Yeah, don't go away. Stay right here. It's always like, oh, this is taking so long to thicken. Okay, let me go get that thing in the fridge. And then you turn around and it's boiling and then you've overcooked. So you don't want to overcook your custard. Already I can tell it's working. Okay, so while you're whisking, it starts to thicken. Okay, so now let's do the spoon trick. I got a little spoon here. So what I'm looking for when I do this is I take my finger, trace the back, and then I hold it up to myself. And if it doesn't come together, okay, then I know it's ready. And it hasn't come together yet. Okay, that is ready. So we are done. We've made our ice cream base or our frozen custard base. Now, next step. The next step here is to get the custard nice and smooth. We want it silky smooth for our frozen custard. So we're going to just take this and pour it right through a larger sieve into a pitcher. And then that way, if there's a little peppercorn or anything, we're going to catch it. If for some reason when you cooked it, the heat was a little high and maybe there might be trace bits of egg in there, or even the arrowroot can sometimes kill. We'll get that out. So that's going to really refine that. And I mean, refine in the good way. We want to make a silky texture. Okay. So once that's done, that aside. Okay. Let's get a little spatula here to push this through. And we want to get every last drop. What's left here? Oh, I found one peppercorn. And actually, I did a good job. No little egg bits, but sometimes it happens, okay? You might see little trace bits of maybe spices that aren't really ground very well, or just other little pieces that end up happening when you're infusing. Okay, so that is the custard. So what you did here, now this takes time. I have finished, this is all ready for my ice cream maker. I use like a good ice cream maker. You don't have to get anything too fancy. These are excellent, the Cuisinarts here, I'm just showing you. But the custard is way too hot to make into frozen custard yet, but I can show you how it looks when it's done. We have some in the refrigerator, right? So we have some ice cream that's in the fridge. So I just put it, so let me grab that for you. So that's the container here. You want to always keep this in the freezer, okay? But let me show you what it looks like. So this is the custard. We cover it well, and then just let it chill for about 4 hours. So this is one of those desserts you want to kind of think about when you want to serve it. Like if you want to have it for Father's Day, make it today, chill it overnight, then you don't have to worry about it, and then churn your ice cream with your ice cream maker. So let me show you how it looks. Give me a second. All right, so after you make your ice cream, take it out of that container. So don't just leave it in here. Ice cream gets kind of funky if you leave it in here. This is not a storage device, it's to churn the ice cream, that's it. Okay, then take it out while it's soft and frozen, and then put it in a container. That one open. This one's a little stuck. Okay, there we go. All right. And what I have here, let me just show you. And if I show you, hopefully I have an eater around here. I think my son's nearby, so he'll probably eat. You want a nice soft serve. So see, I have this nice, beautiful texture. And that is our frozen custard, everyone. It is so delicious. It is crazy good. And it's only half a cup of maple syrup and all those beautiful spices that have been infused and actually become more activated and more intense. So it's just a wonderful thing. So I hope you do try this recipe. As you can see, I made it in real time with the exception of chilling, and it works. So let me just set this aside, and then I will share with you my next recipe.
Can we ask a couple of questions?
Absolutely. While you do that, I can eat my frozen custard, because I can't. I'm dying.
Wish I was there.
We'll be over there, honey. Maybe tomorrow.
Yeah.
Maybe tomorrow we'll be in Berkeley.
So when you're cooking the spices, like sometimes I do that and it seems like it doesn't get enough of the spice flavor. Like how long do you let the spices sit in the milk mixture before you?
So right now, when I made this batch here that I'm sharing with you, the demo, I kind of put it together pretty quick.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if I wanted to infuse a little longer, it's still quite hot. I could put all those whole spices in for another 10, 15 minutes and just let them sit in there.
Uh-huh.
And they'll pull more flavor. Uh-huh. So you kind of have to, with making custards like that, if you want it to infuse longer, you can infuse it longer. Just don't add the egg yet. Don't thicken it yet. Just infuse with the spices. Like I'll make a gelato or, frozen custard which is, gelato is like the Italian word for frozen custard, essentially. But you can make it with, say, lemon verbena, which is a beautiful lemon flavor.
Uh-huh.
Because you have a milk that has high fat, it's going to hold on to the flavor.
Uh-huh.
So it's relatively easy to infuse it. You just need to let it cook longer. Just don't let it come to a boil. Slow, low simmer. If it's nice and hot already and your stove, you can't calibrate your stove very well, I'd turn off the heat. I'd just let it sit there and steep like tea.
And then you just taste it and see.
Taste it as you sometimes, like I said, that pinch of sea salt really helps, like, bring that flavor to the forefront. So it's a good little way to kind of coax it out. So, but again, the fat, remember, anything fatty is going to just really absorb the flavor from the herb, from the spice, and it's out of sight. So if you're finding that it's not infused enough, just let it sit there longer. And like you're decocting tea. So from anything hard, woody, spices like that, especially if they're whole. And a way to speed it up, if you notice, I did put some powdered spices.
Right.
The powdered spices, the ground spices, speed up this process because they go right into the liquid, as opposed to something like a whole cardamom pod will infuse flavor, subtle. But then your powdered cardamom will be a little more intense. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's something when you think about when you're flavoring with spices, anytime you use the whole seed or the whole spice, in its whole form, it has great flavor, but nowhere near as intense when you grind it after, say, you've toasted it, which I'm going to show you in this next recipe, because we're going to make a spice blend. And so, like, when you look at a recipe that calls for the seed, you can't just equally swap it out for a ground. Like, you wouldn't use the whole amount. Like, say it called for a tablespoon of cumin seed. You couldn't then put a tablespoon of ground cumin, because you're going to just like overly cumin your recipe, and you'll be like, why is it so strong? Or why is it so bitter? Because sometimes if you overuse certain spices, it becomes too bitter, like cinnamon. Now, people make that mistake with cinnamon, that it's, oh, I need more cinnamon to make it sweeter. Well, cinnamon isn't inherently sweet. It's a spice, and it's actually pretty potent. And if you over cinnamon or over turmeric, it'll start to taste astringent or bitter, or it won't be satisfying. So there's a real art to that. Any other questions? Will I take another spoonful before it melts?
How long can you keep it in the freezer before it gets icy?
Well, if you can keep it in the freezer for a week, go ahead. But I think you'll probably finish it in, 2 to 3 days. Longer than a week, it'll start to get too icy.
There's a question. Jean says, how do you know when it's ready to go from the ice cream maker to the freezer? So how do you know?
You mean, okay, so you've made the ice cream custard, you've churned it, and now you don't know when to put it in the freezer. You kind of have to do it immediately. So you take it out of the ice cream maker right after you've made it. It's like a soft serve. Transfer it to that container I had, and then put it right in the freezer until you're ready to serve it. The one that I pulled out, that's been in the freezer for over an hour, because I made it this morning, transferred it to the freezer, and it's kind of got that wonderful soft, kind of like, it's easy to scoop. One of the reasons it's easy to scoop is the arrowroot. Okay, that's a little secret. Okay. What in like commercial ice cream, they put guar gum, they put other additives in there to make it that easy scoop, right?
Can you use
any other questions?
Can you use tapioca?
Tapioca starch?
If you don't, what's the difference between tapioca and arrowroot?
It's just a different starch. Tapioca is made from cassava, so you could absolutely use tapioca if you want to. It would be fine. Arrowroot, I like arrowroot. It has some, to me, it's a little, they're both good, but I like the quality. I like the silkiness of arrowroot. Tapioca is good though. So I would, very little difference. I would say the only one that's probably more different is cornstarch, because people have issues with corn. And the corn, from that cornstarch, that starch, I don't know. Because sometimes I question where it's from. We don't need more corn in our lives. Get some cassava or some arrowroot instead.
And
you could also use kudzu.
And is there a way you can make it if you don't have an ice cream maker? Can you
Yes.
just put it into the freezer?
Yeah. So I would put it after you finish. Chill it first. So get it completely chilled in the refrigerator. Then pour it into a shallow pan, or like a shallow baking dish with a lid, like the one I was storing in, and then put it in the freezer. And then every now and then take it out and give it a little stir and then put it back in. That's all you have to do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
Okay.
More questions? I'm just moving things aside.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Okay.
And somebody said you can use a Vitamix, but it won't be as creamy.
Yeah, you can use a Vitamix. I think a Vitamix would make it relatively creamy. I think it's good. I've made many different types of ice creams using just a Vitamix. In fact, for some people who don't want to cook the eggs, if you have really good fresh eggs from good chickens and all of that, you can put the egg yolks in the Vitamix with your milks and mix it all together in the arrowroot, and then make your ice cream that way, and then you're not making a stovetop custard. But I want to show you this because this is kind of a great technique to have. And then also, just so you know, what I just made, you could pour into custard cups and it's pudding. Okay, so if you just said, I just can't wait, or all of a sudden the temperature dropped, like I need something warm and cozy, there you are. Or you just want to enjoy it. That's just a different way. That's what I just did. So when I churn it in the ice cream maker, I'm basically churning custard, because that's why it's called frozen custard. All right. So let me show you, are we ready to move on, or any last questions, or do you guys want to move on to the next one?
I think we should roll. Time's coming on.
Okay, let's roll. All right. So what I'm going to show you now is how to make a spice blend. And this is a Latin spice blend. I cook a lot of Latin food. We cook all different types of food. But I love the flavors of chilies. And chilies have a lot of healing properties too. Like turmeric, they really help lower inflammation. And when used, you can have a lot of spice in your life or just a little. We're all a little different there, okay? So what I'm going to do is make my own chili powder. So when you go to the store and you get a chili powder, they're great, but they've been sitting in those little bottles for a long time. And also you can't really control the ratios of the different types of chilies, because chili powder is a variety of chilies, sometimes has cumin too. And something like cayenne powder is just pure cayenne, which is much hotter than a chili powder. This is sort of taking those two and marrying them together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to toast my spices first. So I have a dry saute pan here. So you just bring the heat up, low heat. I have a pretty powerful stove here, so I know this is going to get hot pretty quickly, and I want to toast my spices. So I have some coriander seeds. I'm going to start with the coriander first. Because I don't have a huge pan, I'm not going to put all my spices and pile them up. I want to have a surface area for every spice here so that I can toast them all. Now, as I do this, I give the pan a little swirl, and I know I have a hot pan, so I'm good here. I'm going to show you how to do this in a mortar and pestle. So I have a really nice marble mortar and pestle that I'm going to grind my spices in. You could also use a spice grinder. So this is a spice grinder that you can get. I think it's a KitchenAid, but there's different varieties. And what's nice about those is it has a little cup, and then you can add the spices right in and then grind away. So if you do a lot of spice grinding, then get one of those. Or if you just love this sort of process of doing something by hand, which I do love. One wonderful thing about making your own spice blends because it's like aromatherapy. So you're getting all those wonderful aromas as you're doing it. However, I do caution you when you're doing chilies, that wonderful aromatherapy will send you sneezing or coughing. So be careful because it can be pretty spicy. Has anyone ever done that? You toast spices or you're making chili and then the spices themselves, you get a reaction because they're strong. So what I'm looking for in what I did here is I want to smell them. Okay, so my nose knows here. As soon as you start to smell them, you know you're ready. And it's getting there. It's just a hint right now. And it doesn't take long. We're talking 30 seconds. It's literally under a minute. So now we're going to add that into my mortar and pestle. If you don't have a mortar and pestle right away, you can always put this on a cold plate. Make sure it's for a cold bowl. Just make sure so that it stops cooking. Okay, so when you toast spices or nuts in a dry saute pan like this, you don't toast them and leave them there because the pan is hot. It's going to continue toasting and possibly burn your spices or your seeds. So we're going to add cumin seeds next. And just so you know, cumin seeds, they toast up pretty quickly. And remember, I have a very hot pan, okay? So I'm looking for spice and I am flipping a little bit just because I want to make sure that these little seeds are moving constantly. I don't want them sitting in one place because it might get a little too toasty. And we just wait. I wish you could smell it because you just wait for that aroma to come through and then you have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful spice blend here that we're about to put together. So I'd say about 5 seconds and we got it. And then we're going to do the next one. Smelling good. And sometimes as you toast spices, this is ready, the spices will start to jump. There's a book that I love. It's an Indian cookbook. It's called Dance of the Spices. And it was my first, oh, wow. It's funny because once I put it into this molcajete, into this mortar and pestle, I just got a huge waft of cumin and coriander. And it's amazing. So now I'm going to toast these chili flakes. So instead of cayenne, I'm going to use chili flakes. Give these a little toast, and that'll, again, intensify it, really pull out those volatile oils, wake it up. So this wasn't intense. You know, it's intense already, but it's just really going to be much more vibrant. Okay, that's it. That's all you need. You see how quick that was? And I can tell because I'm about to cough. All right, so now the next thing you do is you're going to grind them. So when you're grinding your spices, push the mortar and pestle down. Don't pound it, or all the powder will come up into your face. Not a happy day. You also see me pulling my face away. I don't want to bring my head right over it. Okay, especially when you're working with chilies. And then just stir. You're basically stirring and pushing the pestle right into the mortar. Okay, now we're going to add our other spices. So, standing away for a second. I don't want to cough. Live cooking here. Live reactions. Cinnamon. Thyme. Oregano. Allspice. Okay, these are all powdered, freshly ground. Then I have sweet paprika. Put that all in. Smoked paprika. One more spice here. Almost forgot to on this one. It's a little peppercorn. I want to add that peppercorn in. Let me just turn my heat on real quick. And let it heat up. Okay, so because, yeah, I can do that. So we're just going to give that a minute. I'm going to save this spice grinder here, the electric one, for the next step when we make our fish. So just heat that up, and then we're just gonna stir, okay, and bring this all together. There it is. So I have my pan is so hot, I don't need to spend as much time. And then toasting it. Okay. And then another technique is to push against the mortar and twist, okay? So I have a beautiful chili powder. Like, this is totally done. Then what you can do when you have your chili powder is you can take a jar and you store it, okay? So store it in a nice little mason jars, label it, and you have your own house-made chili powder. If you want it more finely ground, use the electric version. I like little pieces. This has texture in it. It's going to be perfect for my next recipe that I'm going to show you right now. So let me show you. We're going to make some tilapia. And I also have, it's a wild tilapia. That's what I found today at the store that was the freshest and the best. But you can also use a wild caught. That's the what I'm doing with this chili spice rub. But I have to tell you, you can rub this onto chicken. You can actually stir it into butter and make a chili butter. There's so many things you can do with your own spice blend. Okay, so now let me just bring my cutting board in here real quickly. I just need to cut my lime. All right, set that aside and let's get this started. So I don't have the fish out yet because I'm going to take it out in just a minute. But you're going to take a little good quality mayonnaise. So if you make your own, you know, your own mayonnaise is egg yolks, a little lemon juice, sea salt, maybe pepper, and olive oil. And then you just whisk it until it emulsifies and looks like this. So it's nice and thick like your own mayo. If you can't find or just, you know, you need to go get it, you can get good quality mayonnaise now. It's just made with good quality oil. So look at the ingredients. Let's make sure that it's just olive oil or just avocado oil, no canola oil, no soybean oil. Okay, so try and avoid those. Miracle Whip is not mayonnaise, by the way.
No.
Right. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to take little seeds out here, and I want to put a little bit of my lime juice into the mayo, just about a tablespoon's worth. And then I want to add a tablespoon of my spice mix. Mm-hmm. And if I want a little extra spicy, I'm going to go a tablespoon and a half. Then we just stir that together. So we just grab a little spoon and we stir it together. And this is the coating for our fish. Okay. The rest of that spice, I've got quite a bit of spice mix, is going to go in that jar. Okay, so let's get our fish. Let me go get the fish. All right, so with this recipe, we're going to take our fish. So like I said, wild cod, any good quality white fish. I was going to do this recipe with wild cod, but I just found these tilapias. They look really good. They were fresh. So you just place them in here into your baking sheet. And now let me give you a little trick here. When you make anything that you're going to paint onto raw anything or any kind of raw meat, don't just dip and then paint, because invariably you may have more than you need. So if you have more than you need and you don't want to cross-contaminate, use a spoon and then plop it in the top. Don't touch the fish. And that way, if you want to set some aside, like a sauce, it's not cross-contaminated, okay? That's probably enough for this fish. You just do one side. This is a pretty intense flavoring here with the spice and everything. So you just want to paint the top. We're going to bake this. Paint the top like that. Really easy. And then if you feel like you need more, you can add more. But these are thin pieces, so I think this amount is going to be perfect. around the edges. And there we are with that. Okay, so we're nearly done, guys. Now we take the other spice grinder, and you could use your mortar and pestle. Mine is occupied right now with chili powder. And you're going to add some, get this out of the way. I'm going to add some pistachios in here and blend these up. So you could also crush them. You could put them in a plastic bag and put a rolling pin across it and crush them that way. There's a lot of ways to crush nuts. Here's one. I like to do it fresh so that you start with a hole and then crush. Don't crush a lot ahead because they will go off on you. They go rancid. So when they're in their whole form, they stay fresher longer. Keep your nuts in the refrigerator or the freezer if you don't use them very often, okay? So now you just place your lid on top. And we make a powder. Okay, so it's kind of like this is gonna be great. Now you could make this chunkier. This has pieces and a little bit of powdery goodness. And then we just sprinkle this right across the top of the fish. Just like that. I'm prepped up for dinner. So you could do this ahead of time, cover it, leave it in your fridge, and then when you're ready to eat, put it in the oven and you're good to go. You're done. You could also pan fry it on one side, finish the top in the oven, okay? So that is our wild and spicy fish. You have your own spice blend right here, which I'm gonna put into my jar, just like this, get every last drop. And then you have a spice to add to your pantry and to use in many different recipes, everyone. So remember, I just named 3 different ideas. You could rub it onto chicken. You could use it on fish like I've done here. You could also mix it with butter and make a compound butter or olive oil and make kind of like a chili olive oil, which is really good. That sounds really good. I might have to go do that. So lots of ways to flavor. Also sprinkle it on veg, okay? So
I got a question, Lizette.
Yeah.
What about salt in this one?
In this spice rub?
Yeah, you put a little salt in the spice mix or salt later?
Yeah, so you could add salt to it, but I added the
I think that would be nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Great. Oh, wow. Let's hear it for Lizette. Yay.
Yay.
Can we go to gallery view, Chris? And we'll have some comments and discussion. Go
Just
ahead,
a quick question on the spice blends. What's the shelf life, or how long can you keep them for?
In a cool, dark place, they last for a couple months.
Yeah.
And what I would do is I would every now and then check your spices, make sure they still have a strong aroma. You know, when I used to do pantry kind of makeovers for people, you'd look in their spice cabinet and there'd be spices. I don't know if anyone remembers those little shilling spices in the metal containers. I've had clients that have had that, and it's 2004. So that's a long time to have that spice. That's like from the 70s. That spice is not fresh. It's FYI.
Whenever you grind something, it gives it more particle for the air and the light to oxidize. So right now it's at its peak, and in a week it goes 10% less. In 2 weeks it's 20% less, and maybe in a month you go, let's do it again. So small batches, frequent use is better than stocking it away or put it in the freezer. So you can certainly, if you make a volume, put it in the freezer and it will slow oxidation.
Where do you get your spices?
So
Where do you get your spices?
I like Frontier Herbs for ordering. For going to Oaktown Spice is a wonderful place, and it's located in Berkeley and in Oakland. That's an excellent place to get spices. It's a great field trip. If you live nearby, go to Oaktown. You can go order from also Star West Botanicals. They have, I think they have Frontier Herbs, or they have their own varieties. So those are good quality places to go and get your spices, herbs and things.
I think going to Turkey to the Spice Bazaar is probably our field trip for this group.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's really the best. That's where we get our saffron too.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a cultural culinary tour around the world. That's That's on the docket coming up.
Yeah, and it's a well vacation too. Wouldn't that be?
Totally, and it creates joy and beauty to us. But yeah, I mean, I think it's always about smell, sight, taste, and feel. And then, once you're engaged with it, you go, that feels great, or no, I don't really get that. Because spices can be very potent and excess will be aggravating. Some of the therapeutic benefits are from the aggravation, which is why a pinch is good and excess is actually not good. And people will experience it. They go, wow, that gave me a headache, or I'm sweating profusely.
Yeah, literally it goes a long way when it comes to the spice.
If we, like even lemon balm and lemon verbena, if we dry them and then put them into jars, would you say that that's as fresh as you get too, instead of going to a store?
Absolutely. If you can get it from your garden and dehydrate it yourself, I do that with verbena. I dry the leaves, and then I can make lemon verbena tea. I can infuse it in heavy cream or coconut milk to make a custard or panna cotta. I can add it to all sorts of things. I even use it in when I cook beans or legumes. I add a little bit of that lemony if you want that lemony flavor. But all of those can be dried. Dehydrating is a great way to go for the herbs.
Thank you. The other thing real quick is I'm really grateful you did this Mexican blend, because my epiphany was to do an Indian blend, a Mexican, an Italian, and whatever else, Moroccan perhaps, and Spanish. Then you don't have every spice in front of you. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes it's nice to consolidate your favorites.
It's true. Blends are the way to go. And because they can kind of, it makes your cooking process much easier. You don't have to measure so many different spices. And if like I still have the individual spices, but it's nice to have that blend for certain types of dishes that you just like the fish dish, easy. A spice rub for any type of meat or any type of vegetable. It's nice to have that all in one sprinkle.
Look at that. That's called the daba.
Wow.
That's an Indian spice container. It's about a $20 purchase at an Indian store.
Nice.
And you keep your spices in little, this is the inner artist right here, the culinary artist.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Goes, little, pinch.
The culinary palette.
Spices, huh? And I have two of these.
And
I have sweet spices for the sweet spice of life, and savory for the savory spice of life.
Perfect.
And boom, we're cooking with spice. And Lizette and I did a full series of nutrition, cooking, and lifestyle lessons called Nutrition Essentials for Everyone. And it's up on the Bauman board. People can purchase it. There's videos. There's a beautiful book that we created with all this sort of background information, the questions people have. It's a course that we're offering now in Singapore to the faculty of the Singapore American School. They're watching Ed and Lizette do this kind of thing together.
mm-hmm.
And it's timeless. It doesn't go out of style. Culture may change, but traditional habits and food and sharing in community, it's really what makes wellness work. So if you like this show, this is public broadcasting. Donate to Bauman, BaumanWellness.com. And this whole week is a gift, but we'd like to extend this to populations of need. If you donate $100, we can give a course away to somebody in a disadvantaged situation. Could be a game changer, a life changer. You give $500, we give 5 courses away. So this is really good stuff. It's really roots. It's the roots of health, the roots of life, and this is the antidote to all of the garbage that we're seeing, which is really very commercial and very superficial. So thank you for being part of the community. Thank you to my dear friend and colleague, Chef Lizette. We'll see you and Jeff soon.